In this video help tutorial, we're on the customer information screen. And what we're going to do is we're going to show you the differences between the subscreen found in the calendar. By using this, it would take you to the calendar. And we're talking about the subscreen. When you click the button, I'm going to bring that up so you can see it. This would be the subscreen. The subscreen includes the information or parts of the information you're going to see on the main screen in the customer area, meaning this is the information that's shown there. And also the related information is shown also in one of the tabs. But the main information that we're looking at in this screen is replicated when you actually work with this calendar subscreen. You can edit here, and it edits in the record that you're actually working within. By when you select here, it changes the information, as we covered in the previous video on the customer screen. Now, any edits I do here will reflect in the customer screen. And that includes all the things that I've already shown you. So what we're actually doing, we're repeating a lot of the information that we worked with in this particular tutorial, but now we're in the actual customer screen. Up here it says add new client, so if I click on that, you'll see the representation of the actual record, individual records that were shown when you were in the calendar subscreen. Now we're going to go through this screen. A lot of the information is a replication, as I said, of what's in the calendar. And I want to point out that if you create, like I said in the other tutorial, that if you create default records like new client 1, which is actually, if I click on it, we'll show you what it looks like. It says add a client, new client 1. If you created a set of these that say new client 2, 3, 4, and so forth, that would give you records that you could edit in the calendar and just modify the data for the default records that are here. And what that does is it allows you to create records within the calendar subscreen instead of having to come over here and create them here. It's just a little bit more work to come back here and work in the main screen to create a new record. And the way you would do that is say add a new record, and then it would create a new record in this screen. One of the main things I want to point out on this screen that's different is that you have a customer select. And what that does, it allows you to select an individual record, and this is the individual record over here, by using this portal. And as you add a new client in each one of these, it'll keep going down, and then you can scroll through them. They are in alphabetical order, so it's easy to find them. And there's two ways to actually find a record. We're going to cover that next. But if I click on this record, you can see on the name in the portal, it brings up that record so I can review it, edit, or do whatever I have to do, look up information within here using the tabs above here, just like we did in the subscreen in the calendar. So that's a way to navigate and find information. Let's go ahead and look at the menu options that we have from here. Like I said, we're currently on the add new client. And as I said before in the prior tutorial, I can use the viewed video tutorials, which allows you to use the tutorials that we're looking at right here, and that is important. These screens are related in that the customer has its own customer list view, the related contacts has its list view, customer PDF is a standalone, its own screen, activity portal is for the activity in its list view, action item portal, and it does not have a list view, meeting track has a meeting track portal. We'll go through, and we showed you some of that information, but I'm going to show you how when you actually use some of these portals, the difference in the way they actually function. Okay, in this case, let's go back up and we'll start at the top of the screen. We looked at the app menu. Now I had made reference that we have a thing called a Do Action button, and we're going to look at that. What the Do Action button does is it replaces what would be at the top of the screen with all kinds of different buttons. In these particular cases, I've replicated the buttons here in a drop down to make it easier to use. Plus, there are additional things in a menu, if it were included at the top of the screen, that may cause you issues if you don't use them properly. For example, in this application, I have an add new record. Now, there's only an add new record on a parent screen. A parent screen is the original top level person screen. On other screens, you will not see an add record button. In this particular application, there's only one on the customer screen. The next thing is there is a log out here, so if you wanted to exit the application, say for example if you're on an iPad, an FNGO, or on the cloud, or on a Windows machine or Mac, this would log you out and close the application. One of the most important things here about customers, Between records, you're going to see where it says customer ID 2. If I go over here, you're going to see it's 3 and so forth. If I looked at the different records, like this one's number 1, I can actually, when we show it, I could do a find and put the number of the record I'm looking for as far as a find. And I'll show you where that's at. For example, if I come down here and it says start a find, and then I put some data in the blank screen. So in fact, let's just do it. Start find. When I start a find, you'll see it empties out the portal over here, but you cannot do searches within a portal, and these two portals are like that. So anything that's a multi-line record, you cannot do finds. But in the area where there's individual fields, like at the top of the screen, you can do a find there. You cannot edit these as far as being able to do a find and edit these screens down here. They will not edit as far as working with a record. Now, if I want to do a find, I can do, say, the primary contact name here or down here, or start by putting an address in or a city, or additional things. For example, I could put the city, and maybe I want to put a prefix for a telephone number in one of these, like employee phone or any of these. When they have a phone number and they say like they're all in the same exchange, I could say find the city and anybody within there, and those two together would cause the find to create a new set of records, or called records in selection, and those would be able to be now viewed as a group. Records in selection is anything that is used with a find, or omitted records where you can actually look at that particular set of records based on what you need to see. I'm going to go ahead and type in my name because I have a record in there, and I'm going to go ahead and start a find or show the find. And you can see that when I put it in there, I did not put my last name. I didn't need to. I can put that in as long as I have enough of something that's unique to bring up that record. Or I could put everybody with a V that's in the database, and it would bring up everybody that has a first name of V. So let's go ahead and do the do action up here and come down and say do the find. And you can see that it brings up the record that had my name in it. It still shows all the records over here, so you can still select between the records, and you can actually still view them. So if I came over here and I saw Mary, I could say that's fine, and I can come back here. But what I'm going to show you now is if I go up to the list view, there are 4 records in the database. If I come down to the list view and click on it, I see all the records here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a find over here by doing the do action. I'm going to say do a find, or start a find, pardon me, start a find, and in the name for the primary record, I'm going to put my name. When I do the find, you'll see that it's the only record shown. If I come back up to the do action and I say show all records, it brings up all the records in the current database records. You can say that the one record I had prior to this, when I showed all, is the record in selection. Then I brought all the records in selection by doing show all records. I can also omit a record. Say, for example, I click anywhere in this area on a record and I say omit that record. I omitted that record, and now the records in selection are less than the original record in selection. I can then also come back over here and reverse that by saying only the omitted, and it only shows the records that I omit. This is very handy in some cases. Say, for example, you did a record in selection and you had maybe 5 records, and you feel that one of them you want to take out. You can just highlight it and say omit it. And now I can also do the reverse of that. I could say only omitted again, and it brings back the records minus the one I was looking at. So omitted or only omitted, you can reverse it back and forth by using only omitted, or finally coming back and say show all again. And now when I show all, they go back into the original order that they're supposed to be. Now let's go, in this particular case, we can go to next record, but it's not going to do you a lot of good. But last record is, for example, if I'm in the first record and it's the highlighted record, you can see a little black bar right down through there. That is the record currently in the choice of records that I'm looking at. If I now go over here and I say, let's go ahead and go to the last record, you'll see that the bar moved down to the last record. Well, that's not so exciting, except for if you have 1,000 records and you want to go all the way to the bottom for some reason, you can go ahead and click that. It'll go to the last record. This is sometimes used in a portal where if you're adding new records and you want to have a new record added and you're always having to go to the bottom of the list, you can use the last record. It'll take you to the bottom of the portal. Now let's talk about editing. If I click on the little button up here, I'm now editing in the record that I was looking at. In some cases, it's actually spelled out as edit. And you can see over here, if I clicked on this record, I would be looking at this particular row record or this one. What I want to point out in a portal is that if you want to create another new record, as soon as you add some data in this field or any of the in that row, it'll automatically drop a new blank record like you see here down. So when web was created, it dropped a new blank record as soon as I started adding data in this row. And I can also go look at the actual portal record. In this particular case, this is the contacts portal. And in the contacts portal, I have a big information thing that I can create down here about this particular record for Mary Smith. And I can have her address and information in here to review for the individual record. I can also have additional things like this is the portal data, the contact's name, the relationship as far as to the primary person, the type of contact that they are, and this is an agent or whatever it might be. Now, you do not normally edit them in here. You usually make notes on the individual included record for a contact or contacts records. If I wanted to go back or delete this record, I could delete it for a reason. There's a picture if you want to put a picture of that particular contact in here so you recognize them the next time you see them. You can do that. And that's done by going ahead and saying insert a record. Now on the iPad and iPhone it's a little different. What it'll do is it'll say add or edit or remove. And you can do any of those actions by clicking on the same kind of drop down. And you can also, in some cases, if it's set up correctly for that particular field, it'll say view and it'll blow this up to a large view of that same particular item there as far as the person's picture or whatever it is. Now in some cases if you wanted to, you can paste anything you want in there. You can have a picture of their business front if you wanted to. Okay, you can either use the navigation here or you can click on this to go back to the record that had that included in there for that row. So that's what it is. Okay, let's continue. I'm going to point out something that's critically important. When you are in this application, as I stated, you add a new record for the particular record you're viewing, but this is a parent record. And what a parent record does is it's the key one that has added records to it. And all the rest of the screens, as far as the down here, do not have an add record button. I omitted that in all the other screens, but this one, because this is a parent record, all the records that screens that are after this are called child records. Logging out. Logging out takes you, if you're in the iPad or iPhone, you can log out if it's in FMGO or on the cloud or Windows or Mac. This will log you out and close the application. Now, as I noted before, you can see that when I click on this, I am record 2. Record 1, each one of these records have a linking ID. In this case, this is the link, and it cannot be edited, but it can be searched on. So if I came over to do action and oops, I added a new record. That can happen. And when it happens like that, you can not delete the record. Just use it as the next one in the set of records that you're creating. And I do that just to show you that you can do that. For example, I mentioned in the subscreen that you can create new client records. In particular, I'm going to go back to this one so that it's highlighted. And I can go in there and say add client. And then I can go ahead in here and say new client. And I'll say new client 2. Now what that has done is it's created what I call a default record. If I go back over to the customer calendar and I click in here and then I go down, you're going to see that I added client 1 and 2. These are new clients. And so if I'm working in this screen and I'm adding information for a new record, maybe I created it and it's for a new person that walked in and wants something, an appointment or something like that, or calls and wants a new appointment. What I can do is I can go ahead and create a new record for them by just picking one of the default records like 4 and 5 and then edit that information. What it'll do when I go to 4 and 5, or just say 1, whoops, got a little wild there. It's new client 1, and you'll see down here the ID 4 is for new client 1. And all I have to do is edit the rest of the fields in the calendar. And what that'll do is it'll edit a new record into the customer records within the customer screen. So that's just part of what you can do in here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this back to where I was at. You can see that it returns and moves all the data around and shows all the stuff that's in this screen. And the same thing on client support over here. I can use these tabs up here and edit stuff within the tabs and it'll show in the calendar screen, on the customer screen. It'll go back when I go back over there and navigate to the Add New Record screen. You can see back here that Client 2 is one of the new selections, and all the data for this, if you modified it in the subscreen on the calendar, would now be reflected in this screen. Okay, let's go back to this so we have some data we can look at. One of the things that we're going to talk about is doing a find. Now, we did that in the list view, and it does pretty much the same thing, but there are also other buttons in here. If I'm within a record and I want to navigate in this screen to the next record, I would do next record. I can then go back to the first record. If I was on the last one and I want to go to the very first one in the list, it would navigate back to the first or to the last, depending on the button, or I can go to previous records, and that would be dictated by, if I were on 2, I'd go to 1, and so forth through the records. It does not hold true over here on this side, because these are a selection of records for the entire database, and they will not go away unless you're in the find mode, and then they'd be blank. But if I was navigating back and forth, for example, if I said next and I was on Bill Holland, you'll see he's number 3. So that's the linking ID for that record. And now I can do another one. I can say show all records, and you see it has no effect because all I did was show all records and put them in the current set, so all the records that would be shown on the screen would be there. Now I'm going to show you something that's very interesting. Let's say start a find, and I pick my name, and then I go ahead and say do the find, and my record's sitting there. You'll notice everything over here looks the same, but if I go to the list view for the clients, you'll see that the only record showing here in the current set of records is the one I just did a find for. So that you can see is related back and forth as far as the data on the screen. Now if I go over here, as I showed you before, and said do action show all, then all the records would be back into selection. Now if you're on the iPad or iPhone and the keyboard pops up, there's a little thing that looks like a circle and then little arrows on either side. You can navigate between the different records, and you can click in the circle. It'll show you the current numbers that you're looking at. So for example, if the current selection was 1 record out of 10, it would say 1 of 10. And the record would be the 1 record of 10. If it were the number 2, it would be 2 of 10, and so forth. You can click on show all and bring all the records back and see that it'll say 10 of 10. And that's easy to know. Now over here, if you're looking at the keyboard on the iPad or iPhone, it's going to have a plus and a minus. I want to make this very specific. Do not click on those. What they are is, one is delete, which is a negative button, and a plus is add a new record. The way this application is set up, only new records are added only in this screen. The rest of the screen records, if I went to one, for example, I went to related contacts, you'll see that there's no new record add button in this screen. So you have to be very cautious when you're working with this to not click on those. They're not meant to be used. You can also, over here on that side of the keyboard, there will be a few icons that will allow you to go to the top record, top field rather, in the record, and or the next field, so that you can navigate between those. It makes it very simple to navigate around within the iPad and iPhone. Now, let's go ahead and say we looked at new record because we created one. We talked about the lockout and the client ID. The next thing is we're going to be looking at the tabs up here that are repeated also in the subscreen on the customer calendar. We're currently highlighting the customer data, so that's the screen we're in. If you create all the information here and have an address, and then you click on the location, what's going to happen is that the location map will come up. And in this particular case, in some instances, we have an issue with the way that the certain entities, like for example, if you're on a cloud version of this application, you may have an issue with the Google Maps coming up. And that's just something that Google is always messing around and doing things that don't work properly. So I have it working here, for example, and if you go to the calendar, I've done something in the reverse of it to overcome some of the issues with looking at calendar, or in Maps rather, is that we used, let's go over there and show you. It's the best way to do it. Go over here and look in the, whoops, let's go back over here. Just navigate like we're supposed to. I can go to the calendar, I can bring up a record, and I can come over here to the client information, I can click in location, and you'll see what I did is I put MapQuest in this one. MapQuest is the one we use in the calendar, so that if we have any problem between MapQuest and or the Google Maps, you can use one or the other to navigate, and you can see that it's pointing out the address that was in the record that we're currently viewing. So if I click over here to hide that, you can see that that's the current record, and that's the directions. And if you wanted to actually copy the directions, which you can do, you can paste them into here, and they'd be available both on both sides of the application. If you're in the customer screen, you'll see that that customer screen, you could repeat that information for directions if you needed them. For people that have a business where you're actually going to another location, a business site or somebody's home, you could have that added in here and have turn-by-turn directions. Okay, so let's go ahead and go down and look at the next one. We did location. Now customer, in this particular case, repeats some of the information that was on the first screen so you know what screen you're looking at. And these drop-down statuses are all used across screens. For example, if you want to change these or you want to edit them, you can also go back and edit this particular field. And I'm going to show you something in here. This particular contact source has an additional thing down here. If you're making sales and you want to know if you actually made a sale with this guy and it's an individual, you can click yes or no. And also you can see here there is an image over here that you can add if you wanted to have images of either the person or their business front, so you could tell the difference between them. Down here, these are called UDF fields. What is a UDF field? User-defined fields is what they are. This is one of the developer's creations where you won't find this in any other application. What we do is we have a title field and an input field. This scrolls so you could put a lot of data in it. If you wanted to have a unique field that is not included in some of the data that's part of the application, you can come down here and create a title for a field and then put the narrative in there as far as what you want in that field. You can also create additional rows, and you can see that this is a scrolling portal, so you can add as many of those as you want to, and you have 3 fields wide. You can set this up any way you want to as far as on the fly with data that you want to add in there that's unique to this particular customer's record. If you go to the next person's record, then that would be different for that particular person depending upon what you want to put in there. Or you might want to default to all the kind of same things you put in all the records. It's up to you. It's your choice. Let's go back for a second, back to the customer record. And I stated before that you can do finds, but you cannot do finds in the actual portal itself. For example, you don't do finds at all over here, and you cannot do finds in here even though it shows the little spyglass to look for things. But if you go to the portal record, you can do searches within this screen. You can use any of the fields up here or down here, or you can actually work within the notes area down here to go ahead and add or do a find within that record. You can also delete a record for reasons which would take them out of the particular portal row. And as you can see, I did add a picture up here. That would be a fairly interesting business front. Looks like a capital of a state or something, state capital. I put little hot buttons if you want to go back. The primary screen that this is using is the customer screen. It would take you right back over there. And that would show you the current record you were looking at when you went through the portal to find it. Okay, real quickly, I'm going to show you that there is a type client and an edit block, and you can edit this by coming up here and put whatever you want, or you can take out whatever you want. But realize when you take them out, they're no longer available within the pop-down. So you want to make sure that you do not eliminate something if you're going to use it. As you receive this, maybe you don't have wholesalers. You can take that out and replace it with something else that you will be using. Or you can add it to the bottom, and you can put as many things in there as you want to be added into your drop-down for client type. Over here, it's a little different. What happens when you click on the underline up here, you're going to go to a different screen where there's a whole list of default items and a scroll bar over here so you can add some more. You can come in here and edit this by, let's slide this up. For example, if I wanted to edit business account, I can click on this button. You can come up here now and edit that field. Just as a warning, if you're going to be using these on all the different screens and you want to edit or add one, make sure you come in here and click Add Record, add to the bottom of the row, and then add that and edit it up here to add that next thing that you want in there. If you want to take something out, you can click in it. Like if I don't say I'm going to ever write a bid, I could come up here and edit that, and then when I click off of it, it is now saved in place of the item that was in there. But recall, if I said it before, if you modify anything here and you're going to be using it on the other screens, it will no longer be in the drop-down list. Okay, let's go back to the client. We're in the client screen. Anything, like I said, you edit here or edit in the calendar will come back and it'll be identical to whatever you add. So if I added a new word here and then went to the calendar subscreens and looked at those, you would see that that's what's in that field. Okay, I looked at customer. Let's go to activity. Now, in this particular screen, when we did it in the last calendar explanation of this field, when you clicked on this, it told you that it was not being used. Or don't use it in the calendar, because in the calendar what it's going to do is going to change screens, and that will cause problems with the application. So I took it out of there, but it is here. You have to have data in a screen so you can view the portal record for this, the individual record. In this case, if I wanted to see the form that this is used with, I can click here, and now I have a printable form of the actual data at the top and whatever the narrative was I put in there for an activity. If you recall, I said activities are things that you can do that are information based on something that is key to doing something on a daily basis that is related to the client. And you can add information into this and either send it to other employees in your company. You can print it. You can make it a PDF and send it to your other people in the office and your employees. Or in certain cases where you want the customer to have a copy of that so that they can recall what this is, you can print it and then hand them a paper copy. Or on the iPad or iPhone, you can actually make this into an email and email it to them if you want to, which is kind of really nice. And we'll cover that later in the last video that we're going to do in the tutorials. Let's go ahead and edit this record, come back over here, and you'll see that that was the activity. Very similar to the activity is meetings. Obviously, in certain businesses, you may have face-to-face meetings either at the company for the client or at their home or in your offices. And what you can do here is you can have a list of agenda items that you want to put in there. And you can put a numerical number 1, 2, 3 and have those items in there and scroll down when you're at a meeting. You could be using an iPad or a laptop or whatever it is, depending upon what you're using. If you're on the cloud, you can use almost any device, including an Android device, to do this. So what you would do, like all the other things, you would start to create information here. It'd add a new blank record below, and you would fill in the information that you're working with as far as the description of the meeting, as far as where it's going to be, the agenda, who's going to attend the meeting, or people that you can add on the fly at a meeting, and then meeting notes. Meeting notes can also include pointers to an action item so that you'll have it that they came out of that particular meeting. And what you can do is you can also use numeric information here in order to create a list where it breaks down based on individual line items that you want to be aware of. Once again, you can see that it shows the ID for the records, and that's the linking record ID. And then in this case, if I want to see the printable device, I click on the clock over here and it comes up, and here's another printed sheet that you can use to send out to people either in an email or print a copy and hand it to them so that they'll know what the agendas are, who's going to attend, and what the meeting notes are about, and things that you want them to know about in the meeting. You can also delete these if you had to. It'll pull them out of the row for that particular thing within the portal. So let's go back to edit that. So that's the meeting we just looked at. And like I said, in most cases when you're doing a meeting, you should have all these filled in or create as many. Now this is for one meeting at a certain location. Each time you create another one, and there's another meeting. Same thing with action items. Action items are created, and they may be in relationship to a meeting or an activity that was something that was asked for, or something you have to give, or the client is going to give you as an action item. And it runs basically the same way. You create the date, the action name, the start date, the action status, and that's a thing you can, because status can be so different, I did not use a drop-down list. You might type in there anything you have to. The finish date when it's completed, or the date that it should be finished, and then who is actually the action person. In this particular case, you can type anything in there. Say if it's an employee name or whatever, you would go ahead and put that in there. So for example, I could put Mary Jones, who is a client, and it's a thing for Mary Jones, who is the client. Obviously on the iPad or iPhone, a keyboard would pop up. And I just want to make you aware that when that does that, you can actually pop up the keyboard, and it'll also scroll the screen up so you can get to that particular thing as far as editing it. Okay, on this screen, obviously, it's a meeting for the primary contact, and also the business name and information about the business or individual that you're going to be working as far as the action items in here. And of course, when you click on this, now you have your action item form that you can either email, you can delete it if you need to, and it's in respect to the record ID again. Here we go again in this particular case. And then we can go say edit. It takes us all the way back to this screen. Okay, now we've covered an awful lot. Let's just recap a little bit. Navigation-wise and do actions are some of the top things you'll be using in here. Navigation takes you to either the customer calendar or any of the other items within the back end of the application. You can also manage data by adding client information, and a client is an individual standalone record, and everything within that particular client record that is linked to is linked by its customer ID. So if I go to other screens and add or edit data for that particular client, you'll always see their ID as that is the one for that record for that client. You can log out from this screen and close the application. You can add new records. You can edit and add client contacts, or use any of these tabs over here as far as editing and putting in information. In the next video tutorial, we're going to do a walkthrough, and we're going to walk through all these different screens so you can see them. It'll be somewhat of a review, but it'll also cover all the screens in the application so you're aware of all the usage for those screens. Okay, let's go to the next tutorial and start looking at the rest of those screens. Thank you.